If I was ever in that hypothetical situation where I was only ever allowed to own one watch and one watch only, I know for a fact that that one watch would be this IWC Mark XVI Spitfire. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. And if you've ever seen any of my videos before, there's a reasonable chance you'll know that I'm a big Pilot watch fan. You'll also probably know that that still remains a surprise to me because they're not a style watch that I expected to like so much, let alone like them more than almost any other style of watch. And if you are going to like Pilot watches, there's a reasonable chance that at least at some point in your watch collecting experience or life, you're going to consider the brand IWC. Now, I'd never really fully considered this brand because, well, they're relatively expensive watches. And when you talk about Pilot watches and expensive watches, it doesn't really seem to fit together for me. Now, I know that IWCs are expensive for a reason. They're very well made, they're beautiful watches, but they are very much Pilot watches. So I'd never really considered buying one. And that wasn't until I did a very simple search on Chrono 24. And I do this a lot in general for just brands, just to see what is out there. A simple search. I typed in IWC, I put from low to high in regards to pricing, and then I scrolled. I scrolled until I saw a watch that really stood out to me. And the watch that stood out to me was the Mark XVI Spitfire. And then when I looked at the price, I thought, oh, that's not cheap, but it's achievable. It was in the price range that I had available for a watch at that time. In fact, I thought that actually might be the right price for me for this watch. In fact, when I looked closer at it, when I started watching videos about this watch, I tried to look at pictures of this watch, I realized that this is the best looking IWC that I've ever come across. And it was in a price range that I could afford. And the sizing was right for my wrist too, because a lot of IWC watches tend to be rather large. This one, the right size, a great look, and I could afford it. Now, I didn't actually buy the one that I first found on Chrono 24. I spent some time doing some research on them, looking at pictures of them, trying to find the right one at the right price with the bracelet, because this one comes on a leather strap and a bracelet. And because this watch is almost 20 years old, some of them don't come with the bracelet or don't come with the links to the bracelet. So I needed to find the right one. I actually ended up finding mine on eBay, and I paid 3,500 Australian dollars, which, well, that's a lot of money for a watch, and I'm aware of that. But I can tell you right now, I'm very happy that I made that choice to buy it. But I still made that choice, and I made that choice thinking it's a great looking watch and the dimensions are good. But I did not foresee it becoming one of my favorite watches in my collection. In fact, I can say right now that there is another watch in my collection, my Hamilton Jazzmaster GMT, which is my favorite watch of all time. This watch, well, it hasn't surpassed the Hamilton, but it's equal to the Hamilton. I like these watches equally as much. So this and my Hamilton are my two favorite watches that I've ever come across. Not only in my own collection, but any watch that I've ever seen. And there's four main reasons why this watch has become one of my favorite watches of all time, and why it has become a watch which, if I was only to have one watch, this would be the watch. Firstly, it has to be the looks of this watch. I love the looks of this watch. I think it is absolutely beautiful. And that's really all I've got to say about part one of that. But the second part of this one, and it has a lot to do with that first reason as well, of being looking really quite nice, is the details and the quality of this watch. In fact, when you look at this watch closely, and I'm going to show you lots of macro footage this time because, well, unlike any other watch I've ever had in my collection, I've spent so much time looking at this one under a loupe and under macro footage because I want to see the details of it. Let's start with that center silver circle, which has a concentric brushing on it. And it really grabs the light. It's a really nice fine brushing as a big circle, and when it's in the sunlight, it just shines. That's surrounded by another concentric circle, which has a more matte sort of finish look to it. It does have concentric circles inside of it as well, but it has a different finish, so it sort of works with that central circle. Then outside that, there's another fine circle as well, which also then has a brushing to it, which again catches the light. So it has this sort of shiny surface, matte surface, shiny surface. On that outer ring, you'll then see the numbers, the 5, 10, 15, etc., as well as the minute markers. Now they're printed on in black, and that matches in then with the IWC logo under the 12, and then the Mark 16 automatic above the 6, and the little Swiss made there, right down there, just above that 30. So you've got some printing on the dial, you've got these different surfaces, and that alone is actually really nice. But then when you look at this watch on an angle at those applied markers, there's something very special about these applied markers. Firstly, they just look great. That sort of triangle with the 2 dots that you get on pilots' watches, plus of course the numbers, the cutoff number at the 3, the elongated line at the 6 and the 9 do look very nice. But if you catch it at the right angle, and I look at this watch on an angle a lot, you'll see that those applied numbers and those markers are quite deep. They're thick. They stand up off the dial in a 3D effect significantly. And when you look closely, you're going to see that the sides of those metal applied markers are brushed and the top surfaces are polished. So they almost feel like they're floating off the dial. And it is a really, really cool effect. And those work in really well with those sort of matching polished sword-shaped hands, which are really long, which I do really appreciate it. And this super delicate polished second hand as well. And those hands and those markers are filled with lume, and filled with lots of lume. And keep in mind that this watch is almost 20 years old, and you'll see that the lume is actually amazing. And I'm really impressed by the lume by this watch. And I'm even more impressed that it is 20-year-old lume. And the details do continue when then you look at the 3 o'clock date window. It actually steps down in a really nice way. When you look at it under this macro footage, you'll see the details and also the quality of what is going on this dial. Look at the lettering itself. Look how crisp it is. Everything about this watch is done at a very high level, and you can then really tell that this is from a brand that does things very well. And it is those little things, those extra sort of elements of quality, of thought, that really elevate this watch. And that's all covered by this beautiful double domed sapphire crystal with AR coating. And this sapphire crystal is also held in place in a special way that if there is a rapid change of air pressure, that crystal won't pop off. Because this is a pilot watch, it is a watch from a brand that creates lots of pilot watches, so they've got a technology that saves your watch in that particular circumstance. The third reason why this watch has become such an integral part of my collection is the sizing of the watch. It is a 39mm case, which is lovely. It is only 10.8mm thick, including the sapphire crystal. It'd be under 10mm if you remove that crystal, and that sort of really gives you an understanding of how thin this watch is, even with an automatic movement. The lug to lug is 47.5mm, has a lug width of 20mm, and on that bracelet, it's 117 grams. Now the majority of this watch, including the bracelet, is all brushed, but there are a little bit of polished surfaces. On the very top of that fixed bezel, it is all polished. You'll see there's quite a few marks on my particular version because this is a watch that has obviously been worn a lot. I've certainly worn this one a lot, but it had a life before me too. But this is a polished surface. There's a very fine chamfered polished edge running along the edge of the case and those lugs. And the bracelet, well, the sides of the bracelet is also polished. The rest of the watch is all brushed. And when you flip it over, you'll see that there's a fairly simple case back on this one. And it is enclosed, as you can see, it is screw down. It says International Watch Company. And that, along with the screw down crown, gives you 60 meters of water resistance. Now, I'm a little bit surprised that this is only 60 meters of water resistance with a screw down solid case back and a screw down crown, but that's what it says, so that's what I'm going to tell you. When you're looking at that crown, it looks relatively simple, which I thought would be a complaint by me, but it's not. It's actually a really nice and easy crown to use. It also has the nice IWC logo in there. As I mentioned, it is a screw down crown, and it has one of the nicest winding experiences that I've ever experienced. because this watch contains the 30110 caliber, which effectively is an ETA 2892-A2. However, this particular movement was taken into IWC and enhanced, and there is a difference in the feel. Lots of ETA movements have a slightly gritty feel to them. Nothing wrong with them, I love ETA movements, but this has a beautiful winding feeling to them. Now, you obviously can't see this movement, you can't see through that case back, but if you could, you'll see that there is a surrounding to the movement made out of a soft iron, which is deliberately there to give this watch a little bit of additional magnetic resistance. The fourth and final reason why this watch has been elevated to one of my favorite watches of all time is how it feels on wrist, how comfortable it is. And I think there is two main reasons for that. Partly the size, especially that thickness of the watch. But it has a lot to do with this bracelet, because this bracelet is by far the best bracelet that I have ever experienced. It almost feels delicate, yet it has some really interesting characteristics to it. Brushed on the top, polished on the sides, but if you look down the bracelet, you'll see those two middle links are raised. It almost has a machined or an engineered sort of look to it. They are small links that articulate really nicely, and it really wraps around your wrist. And when you look behind it, you'll see those little dots. And this is a really interesting feature about this watch, and obviously this brand at this sort of time, because you can change out every single link on this bracelet, and you don't need tools. In fact, 2 toothpicks will do the job. You push that little dot in, and then you push the pin out. And you can do this with every single link, so it is almost endlessly adjustable. However, this watch does not come with any micro adjust, and this watch that I bought did not come with any spare links. Finding a watch like this on the bracelet with spare links is rather difficult, and I'm unsure if this originally came with half links. If it did, it would be a good idea because there is no micro adjustment. In fact, this watch actually sits on my wrist just a fraction too big, which I don't mind because I quite like a loose fitting watch, but if I had the opportunity, I would cinch it in a fraction. But when you look at the clasp, have you ever seen an integrated clasp that looks that good? I don't think I have. Big IWC logo, singular pusher on the side. It almost looks like it's part of the bracelet, and when you open it up, you can see all that decoration on the internal structure of it. And that then translates to a beautiful feeling watch on the wrist too. Now, if you're not a big fan of this bracelet, which I'd be surprised if you're not, because it's one of the standout features of this watch, but I get bracelets aren't for everybody. This watch also is available on a leather strap. In fact, I like this watch so much that I've even considered buying the original leather strap for it, or an IWC leather strap for it. But original IWC parts, like straps, are not exactly cheap. And to be honest, I don't think I'd actually end up wearing it on it because I love the feel of the bracelet so much. Now, I really wanted to show you this one in more detail, even though it's a almost 20-year-old watch, because I know there's going to be people out there that are going to be considering buying this watch. I certainly was. And when I went on that journey to try and find this watch, one of the things that I did was watch every video online that I could about this watch. And some of them were okay, but none of them really showed this watch in as much detail as I'd hoped. If you're happy to be watching this video with the intention of buying this watch, then I hope that this video assisted with that. So I really hope that this video has demonstrated and shown this watch in a lot of detail for you. As always, thank you so much for watching. Maybe check out a couple of my other videos next.